Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to start the third day of the recovery program. So today we are going to start with the options available for recovery. What are the options? Today we'll try to discuss two or three options basically, and next week we'll discuss the final sessions, the final one. Uh, Last two sessions we had discussed why we should go for recovery, the importance of recovery and the process of recovery, that is going through after granting the facility, what are we going to do? Then monitoring and supervision part we discuss, and we try to identify the warning symptoms, and we finally end with the identify causes for failure, and finally we decide what action we should be taken. So I got you a chart saying that how to select the option, best option. First option we are going to discuss about the rehabilitation of sick units or sick advances or any facility fallen sick. Rehabilitation process before you start, what we call process started. The process followed by each lender will vary, but generally it involves trying to change certain conditions to help the borrower to repay the loan, such as increase the repayment terms. So we very first day we discussed what is recovery. Basically, recovery is try to understand the customer's problems and try to solve it. So our last session was built on that. We discussed what are the problems customer face, where the problems are coming from. That is warning symptoms and causes of failure. What are the reasons for failure? Now what we try to do is try to change the certain conditions to help the borrower to repay the loan. There are certain conditions where why the customer may have defaulted, who is in default, who have put the customer in trouble. Sometimes the most of it we have seen that lenders are responsible for default. The customer default is very much less, but it's about 20%. Majority is for the bank, our side. So try to understand the causes for failure and change the conditions or certain parameters where customer can repay the loan. Customer can repay the loan. One of the options we are going to discuss now is increasing the repayment terms, increase the repayment period. If it does not work, then asset may be seized. In case of secured loans or loan recovery case, agent may be enlisted. So the last part we don't have. Recovery agents, we don't have any outside persons who have involved in recovery. Still, we have not developed to that extent. But the most important thing you should understand is there are two options. Either changing the terms and conditions and help the borrower to repay the loan. That is one option. The second option, as I mentioned last week, is the flood to liquidate the assets. Go for it. Now these two approaches we discussed, going along with the customer, change the condition where customer repayment arrangement can be rearranged. That is going along with the customer. If the customer does not work or maybe that proposal is not workable due to some reasons, internal and external factors, then the next option available is to go for exit strategy. Leave the customer out. We'll try to recover from whatever assets given to us, and we will try to dispose or liquidate those assets and try to recover those assets. So these are two options we are going to discuss in this recovery process. Basically, for this analysis I given you, there are three options, three areas we have given. Market viability. The market is viable, it's positive. The viability is positive. That means there's a market to sell the product. Customer's product can be sold in the market. There's a market to sell. Saleability is there. That's the first. criteria. Second criteria, when the customer is agreeable for our proposals and all the customers' proposal, whether we can accept it. But we discussed what is the loan protocol procedure. There are three our approaches based on three criteria. So, on the market viability. Market should be viable. That means the product can be sell. There's a market to sell the product of the customer. It has to be positive. So completely, our recovery is based on the sales. Therefore, the market should be viable. Secondly, customers should agreeable for any changes in the conditions, terms and conditions that we are going to propose to meet the changes. Thirdly, there should be a collateral is viable. That is, collateral should be available. If these three are positive, our option is going for rehabilitation. And the first option is rehabilitation. Rehabilitation process can be termed as measures taken for recovery, retrieval of industrial unit enterprise, enabling it to meet its expenses, so liabilities, and become profitable. Due to some reason, customer had defaulted. Customer's repayment has been defaulted due to some reason. Our rehabilitation process to understand why the reason the customer has been defaulted, whether it can be rectified, can be put it back to normal situation. Right? That can be termed as measures taken for recovery or retrieval of the industrial unit. Put the business can be regained with certain changes. The basic factor we discussed earlier is the market availability. Market should be there, customers should be agreeable. Then we can suggest any changes to the industry, the manufacturing unit, or enterprise, or the training organization. What are the shortcomings what we have identified, or what are the causes we identified for the causes of the failure? We try to rectify it and convert the business as a profitable venture. Ultimately, the repayment comes from the profitability or the surplus cash. So the rehabilitation process is not that difficult, but we have to be very carefully understand the actual problem, the core problem. Resolving the core problem can be retrieve the business. We earlier also discussed why the businesses are failure. Bad initial planning. There's sometimes you may find the planning, entrepreneur does not have a proper planning, not understanding the external factors and internal factors. It's a planning process. Lack of resources, finance is the most crucial point. Most of the businesses fail because of financing problem. So we have to identify why the financing problem has occurred. At the time of granting this facility, we have gone through all these factors. Where we made the mistake. There's no word called mistake. Either our part there's a negligence, or from the customer's part there's a negligence. So try to understand that why the reason, and try to resolve that problem. Mostly what we are seeing, mismanagement is the cause for businesses failing. Mismanagement. Management not understand the certain the market changes, the needs of the customer. Without considering that part, sales-oriented business mostly getting stuck. So they are what you call resources are mismanaging the resources. Resources are going waste. Finally, end up with disasters. Whether we can rectify those things, then we can go on rehabilitation process. If cannot be recovered, our other option we have to go. Then lack of owner's interest commitment. Sometimes you may find that once businesses come to a certain stage, right, when it's picked up, the owner's interest sometimes may lacking. He may have some other interest. He may going out of the business. His commitments are very lacking. He is depending on the employees to run the business. That is another cause for failure. Change in government policies also directly or indirectly it can affect a business. There are certain industries directly government policies have interference may fail. Some are not directly involved in the government policy, but indirectly, without the government policy, business can fail. Now, for example, you can take one of the industry we know that the vehicle trade, vehicle import trade. Due to the government policy, directly, that industry had collapsed. That industry has collapsed. Not only that, as lenders, our recovery also under threat. There's no way of recovery because there's no sales, there's no market. Market is there, of course, there's no supply to meet the market. Limited resources available. So the prices have increased and we know that what the particular industry. Similarly, certain other industries, recently changes taken, government changed certain policies on increasing the taxes. Increasing the taxes. So it will directly interfere in the business. Or changing in the indirect tax policy. For example, applying VAT, increasing or decreasing the VAT, it will indirectly affect the business. So the policy change in government, we have to see whether those are, we cannot manage or we cannot control it. We have to accept it. Within that framework, how can we go ahead with the customer? That's what we have to look into. Okay. Then technological changes is very crucial. The technological change are taking place, very crucial because the most of the machineries, if you find, the technology is very frequently is changing, upgrading. Due to the upgrade or the change in the technology, the existing technology may go idle, or we call it obsolete. It's called technical obsolescence. So the technical obsolete is one of the some reasons for businesses to fail here. Now, when we analyze a proposal for a customer industry, certain machineries the customer want to buy, right? We take the vendor certificate. That vendor says lifetime is about 5 years, so we go for 5 years loan. But within 2 years, the technology may change. Once the technology change, you cannot go ahead with that. Production cost is increased. Or the lower cost of production, machinery is available in the market. So our recovery will be threatened. This happens practically. In the competition, we know that in the competitive the market, the competition's behavior affect the businesses. To what extent my customer can face the competition? There can be a price competition, there can be quality competition. There are different types of competition for particular products. The customer can face for it and survive. And the production inability. That's one of the final things you can see. Production inability, production cannot meet the customer's demand, needs. That's the final thing, the reason for industries getting failed. Okay, the rehabilitation is to revive a sick industry or a project or a business to operate viably. Rehabilitation, put the customer back to business. Theory behind this rehabilitation is put the customer back to business. Business has failed due to some reason. You try to recover and revive the problem, identify the problem, try to solve the problem, and put the customer back to the business. So that will be a win-win situation because both the parties will be back at the customer. Lender as well as the lender both are in a win-win situation. So we have three types of rehabilitation we are going to discuss now. One is rescheduling, other one is restructuring. Then third one is business turnaround strategies. The three approaches we have to go for rehabilitation. First one will tell what is rescheduling. Rescheduling or rescheduling of advances means granting more time period to pay back the facility, matching with the cash flow or the income, and with same terms and conditions already agreed upon. Have you understood? Extending the period, giving more time to customer to pay, to match the cash flow. We'll go back to the first fundamentals of lending. I was always telling about this fundamental. First fundamental of lending is the second one, cash flow based recovery. Cash flow based recovery. Always you match the cash flow with the loan installment. Most of the instances, even now, our lenders not paying much attention to this area. This will apply only when in project finance. In generally, other loans, commercial lending, business lending, I have not seen apply this principle. Always we decide the loan installment based on one factor. What is that? What is that? Yeah? Branch managers, delegated authority. How long you can give the loan? Either 3 years or 5 years. So your time schedule structured, recovery structured based on this number of period. Last past classes, most of the instances we are given these project reports to work out the project reports. Most of the instances what we are seeing is still straight away loan is given for 5 years or 3 years, not match with the cash flow. This is disastrous. If you're having a loan installment and the cash flow, the difference is favorable. Okay, more cash, that the cash flow is very high and the loan installment is very low. What will happen? Surplus cash may be used for misuse of other purposes. It can be invested somewhere else or misuse for other expenses. Ultimately, after 2 or 3 years' time, the cash flow is not sufficient to pay the loan installment because surplus. Or other way, most of these are what will happen. The loan installment is less than the cash flow. Right? At the time of granting itself is very important to find out the cash flow. So if there's something happen in between after granting the facility, if suppose it's something external factor or internal factor, cash flow has been deteriorated due to some reason. Acceptable reasons are there, unacceptable reasons are there. Then we work out, calculate what is the percent cash flow within that cash flow customer and make it the loan installment, reduce the loan installment up to the cash flow, he will be able to pay back. And to do that, we have to extend the period. So the rescheduling, in other words, simply extending the period to reduce the loan installment to match with the cash flow. That is rescheduling, nothing else. And all other terms and conditions agreed will be same except for the time factor period. That's called rescheduling. Rescheduling of loans means to extend or add extra time to existing loan tenure. Existing loan period increased to meet the cash flow, to match the cash flow, resulting in the revision of your monthly installment amount so that you may be able to repay a lesser amount each month. By extending the period, loan installment will come down, then the customer may be able to manage to pay the loan installment. This is where what call issue. So at the time can be either two stages. At the time of granting the facility, we may have miscalculated the loan installment. That's one course. Or during the tenure of the period, going along the period, something internally or externally happened, then the customer's repayment ability has come down. Okay, business customer or even a personal customer. For example, if you take housing loan, we are granted a housing loan for a customer based on his salary, right? So we got the salary receipt, everything we calculated. 40% of the salary is matched with the loan installment, everything at the time of granting the facility, everything comfortable. But after some time, take the case of this epidemic situation in the last year. Most of the companies were closed down. And they have not paid salaries to the employees. Some organizations, they not paid at all. Some organizations paid part of the salary, half salary, sometimes less amount are paid. How to, now the position is the bank owner, how to recover employees from it. Now, if it is going to be continued for a longer time, for example, customer lost employment in that particular company. So he have tried to find out another company where the salary is not the same as the previous company. He wanted to pay the housing loan installment, but his salary is not sufficient to pay. But his opposition. So we had to do it. We had helped him to bring down the loan installment according to the current salary by extending the period. That's called rescheduling. Very simple terms. Customer had defaulted due to some reason. So you rectify the reason or adjust ourselves according to the reason and we can go ahead with the customer. This can help the borrower by some time to adjust the repayment plan and also not default their loans. Keep in mind, the most important, whenever we negotiate with the customer for a facility, what is our approach? What is our approach? I never heard this most of the time. Any bank about this. Whenever customer comes and asks for a facility, right? What we say? How much you should pay? Kochara given loan. The loan kochara given loan. How much you should pay? We approach from our point of view. Kochara given loan. It should not be the way. All other factors are viable. Only the factor of the salary, the income is not sufficient. How much you can pay? Kochara given loan. Loan installment just correct. That should be the approach of the lenders. Most customer kochara given loan palan loan. So customer kochara given haki how much he can pay. His ability to repay. Based on that, we adjust the loan installment. But most of the I told you the problem we have is they're still, most of the bankers are still going by the old methodologies, old concept, by depending on the delegated authority. So whatever loan installment you divide by 36 or 60 and tell this is a loan installment you have to pay. That is from our side, our point of view. Problem is it is not matching with the customer's cash. So we'll come to that next. So we'll get what are the options we have available at the time of granting as well as when going for rehabilitation. Right? This can help the borrower by sometimes to adjust their repayment, time to adjust their repayment plan and also not default their loans. Loans can be continued. Okay. Rescheduling is may be affiliated with the debt. It's a burden for the customer. And we have given urgency given, the deadlines given to repayment and ultimately come for rescheduling. So we try to help the borrower use a line, right? To use a line and put the customer in a recovery position. We are not, we are the, we are lender is the doctor who is going to save the patient, that's the borrower. Our earlier, our senior bankers considered the banker is a bank or a lender is a professional doctor. It's a professional doctor. It's a consultant. It's a professional consultant. Why? The patients who comes to us are the people who are with the financial syndromes. Our patients are coming with a problem that is financial syndromes. So our job is to understand what is the problem, financial difficulties, and give a solution to the. So we are professional doctors, right? Now the may concept very careful understanding. In normal lending, if your medicine take nothing, leda married, doctor, nothing will happen to the doctor. In our treatments, banking, our patient, our treatment, if you give wrong medicine to the patient, before the patient, doctor will die. Because our NK will go up and we have to close down our business. Reschedule. In some maybe concept, we have to go along with the customer, understand the customer. May involve changing the original terms of the debt, may involve concessional rescheduling reduction in the size of the debt. Involved for rescheduling may involve concessional rescheduling the size of the repayment, change in the original terms of the debt, prolong the period during which repayment are collected, to extend the period, they give more time to the period. Lender may need to accept that not all the money will be paid back as a risk. So this is factor we have to understand. Aim is to provide the borrower with the breathing space relief or negotiate, reducing the monthly repayment amount, is negotiate a new loan or restructuring. So rescheduling means allowing the customers to repay the facility with a lower installment, can be meet his financial commitments. So both the parties in a win-win situation. When the borrower is having difficulties keeping up with his or her debt repayments, and lender believes that change in arrangement might give the debtor some breathing space, thus improving the chances of getting money back, it may agree to rescheduling and renegotiating the terms, extending the period. By extending the period, reduce the loan installment to match the cash. Right? The change in the arrangement might have given a debtor some breathing space. The aim of debt rescheduling is to provide the borrower with the relief of breathing space when required, due to perhaps an economic recession, job loss, illness, or some other unforeseen personal event. Normally, we are not going to do rescheduling for willful defaulters. If a customer willfully defaulted, we are not going to go for rescheduling. Because customer's intention is not to pay the loan. Therefore, we'll take the other strategies. But if a customer having problem, sometimes the economic recession what we are facing today, or customer job loss, or the illness, permanent illness, or some other unfortunate person event, accidentally injured, or due to some family bereavements, there are acceptable reasons are there. So as a bank, analyze these things and try to adjust accordingly. We have to adjust ourselves to match with the customer's repayment plan. So rescheduling, this rehabilitation, is not ask the customer to change. We ask ourselves, we try to change ourselves to match the customers in the framework. Okay, this principle is very important. So rescheduling of advances will take place mostly. Other reasons for rescheduling, basically under financing. Most of the business loans that we are seeing, we have not structured the facility according to the customer's need. We have to structure the facility according to the customer need, business customer. Business customers' needs can be identified broadly two categories, and can be subdivided into two categories altogether, 4 categories. Any business customer asking for a facility, either it can be a capital expenditure, construction, infrastructure development. Secondly, it can be purchasing of capital goods, machineries, vehicles, furniture fittings. Those also are coming under capital finance category. But tenor of the loan facility is different. That's it. It should be treated as a separate lending unit. The second component comes in the working capital finance. There are two segments of working capital. One is permanent working capital, where the working capital is fixed, it's not moving, changing. That's called permanent working capital. The other component is the operational working capital, where the day-to-day requirements to meet the day-to-day. So your financing, your evaluation has to be based on this need-based finance is that. For what purpose does customer need the finance? Capital, it should be. So that means construction, so long-term facility should be given there. The capital, where machinery and other vehicles are involved, it should not go more than 3 to 5 years. The permanent working capital should be revolved within 1 year. Okay, 1 year to 3 years, permanent working capital. Revolving working capital, 1 year should be reviewed annually. So, structure facility. The problem we are having is incorrect or inadequate data. You have to get from the customer the adequate data to do this evaluation. Basically, your interview with the customer for the facility, you should be able to structure all this information for your decision. Second one is wrong period. I told why the wrong period is coming. It is basically manager's delegate authority. We calculate the loan repayment with the delegate authority, not the repayment ability. Not the repayment ability of the customer. So therefore, our period has to be adjusted. If the customer repayment ability is high, later, we should not go for 3 years or 5 years. If we can recover within 2 years, we had period has to be loan installment has to be structured for recovery within 2 years. If the customer has surplus cash, can recover. So based on the cash flow, we'll do the recovery. So recovery, then you can reduce this the period. The period is has to be based on the repayment ability. If you look at sometime capital expenditures, when you work off a capital expenditure, can you remember? Dr. Loganathan has done the session on IRR technique, NPV technique, payback method. What are these methods? What are these techniques? To identify capital repayment period, how long it will take to pay back the capital. That's called capital investment techniques. So you use those techniques for identify the period, not merely struggling within the delegate authority framework. Okay, if not matching with the period, right, what we have to do is put it to there are higher levels who have a longer period of repayment period can be given. Right? Now, if you take practically, if you see how it is worked out like this. For example, a personal customer wanted a facility. They say, what 1 million? 1 million facility needed. So the traditional bankers just work out on their our delegate 5 years or 3 years and say, okay, you have to pay loan installment is about 35,000 or 36, depending on the interest rate. We say about 35,000 I have to pay. Customers, the repayment abilities, say less than, let's say over 30,000. We can pay only 30,000. But loan installment comes 35,000. So now you have got, what is your option? You have a number of options. The first option is to customer has no repayment ability, therefore reject the facility. Are we applying this technique this year? No. आप एक को हमारे लोन का करे पटवान न होना. That is our policy, right? अभी तक ये ना target take achieve करना. इन्हें हम एक लोन का को हमारे नहीं होना. So if they have a repayment ability or not, we try to adjust that. So your first option should be you have to reject that facility. Or you have other options. The other option is you try to match the loan installment to the available cash flow. That may reduce the loan installment to match this 25,000 salary income. How do you do that? Reduce the capital amount required. The customer wants 1 million. You say, okay, you take about 6.5 lakhs or so lakhs. Within that, you can pay this loan. One capital balance. This is the mostly practically what's happening. So what will customer does? Definitely his need has not been fulfilled. He needs the shortfall of 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs. What he does? He borrow from the street lenders. So which loan is he servicing first? Street lenders. So we have, at the time of granting a facility itself, we are granted a non-performing advance. NPA का तमें दिया दिया. वो तमें second option. Third option नहीं होती ना बेटा. One third option नहीं. Third option is we ask the customer, who's how many personal customers are. Additional income additional income සාමාන්‍ය වයිෆ් ගෙදර වහනවා කඩයක් පන් හදනවා කුගල් කොටුවක් දාගෙන ඉන්නවා self employment එක කරනවා ඔය පොකුත්ම කරන්නේ නැහැ එහෙමනම් ග්‍රාම සේවකයන් ලියුමක් කරගෙන ඒජ් එකේ සර්ටිෆයි කරගෙන 25000 ඉන්කම් එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා self employment එක කරනවා කියලා උගක් කපිය මේ වැරද්ද we do this this is not legally, actually it's a fraudulent method. Since the customer does not have a repayment ability, we try to create an income for him. So we give him advice how to do it. Go to AG office or the provincial, what you call, regional secretariat, up to 25,000, they'll give an income certificate. So you attach the income certificate and say that now the customer having a repayment ability. Whom we are going to cheat? Ourselves. There's no actually cash flow. You created a document for a cash flow and try to grant the facility. Definitely, first installment is customer income NPA loan එක තමයි දීලා තියෙන්නේ. right first එකේ දොර ඊළඟ option එක. ඒකත් incorrect option. What you have to do is correctly, if the customer only has 25,000 to pay, you increase the period. You have a delegate of 60 days, increase it to 84 days or 75 days, 72 days, 72 installment. Increases further to match with the cash flow. So his income is 25,000, loan installment is 25,000, loan amount is 1 million, period is increased. Can you do that? When it comes to defaulter facility, reschedulement karanakotta, make one of the option we have to apply. But unfortunately, we make it because why you don't have the legal authority, you had to forward this proposal to a higher management. It's not easy to convince them about your proposal. You are weak in that sending the proposal. That's a problem. Enisa, loan amount එකතු කරලා match කරලා NPA loan එකක් දෙන එක තමයි තියෙන්නේ. So when you are rescheduling, take in mind. If it's needed to extend the period, if your proposal is sure about that, then put it in high management. Put it to high management first. Okay, right. Then not matching with the cash flow. The other problem you're having is not matching with the cash flow. I told you earlier the problem is this. So that's why you apply the wrong period. So most of the instances what we have seen is we are granting a facility en bloc. It is not structured facility. I told you a little while ago how to structure a facility. How much working capital needed? The working capital is the generating income for the repayment. So it has to be sufficiently calculated and given to the customer. If the customer does not have cash flow and the necessary capital. Right? Single කතාවක් තියෙනවනේ අලිය ගන්න සල්ලි ගන්න තිබුණාට හෙන්දුව ගන්න සල්ලි නැහැ කියලා. Machinery, everything had taken, but there's no working capital to purchase the raw material. There's no working capital to pay for the laborers. There's no working capital for buying the packing materials. That is working capital. Next problem we see, we have to go for rescheduling is the cost escalation. When you're in facility for more than 3 years, always consider about this cost escalation. Due to the inflation, cost will increase. Therefore, always whenever you when you do a price proposal, keep about 20 to 25% gap addition. But don't release that. You make all the documentation, security coverage, everything for that full amount, and keep the 25% as and when customer needed. Due to cost escalation or due to some reason, to release that fund. So you don't need to get approval from the management. You don't need to have a fresh documentation to prepare. Everything can be reduced. Okay, the final option comes to with the infusion of capital. Specifically, when the working capital not sufficient, the bank has to consider fresh facility. So we'll take that in the next session, next one, with the restructuring. So rescheduling, which sometimes called as loan modification, may be in the form of combination of low interest payment but a longer period during which they are collected. Arrange for the later repayment date, just in the repayment date. Lowering the interest payment but raising how much eventually has to be paid. Interest amount can be reduced to meet the loan installment and can be spread for a longer period. Negotiating a new loan, usually called debt restructuring, we'll discuss next step. So what is rescheduling? Simply extending the period to match with the cash flow. Right, next one is debt restructuring. And restructuring, what is restructuring? How to do restructuring? And what is restructuring meaning? Now this is mostly bankers specifically misunderstand the word. What is restructuring and what is rescheduling? Difference between these two, very carefully you have to understand. Okay, debt restructuring is exercise refers to modification of the principal terms and conditions of the facility, financing a loan, which may include change in the type, structure of the finance, or other significant change in its terms. In other words, restructuring means changing the entire structure of the facility. Depending on the need, changing the entire structure of the facility where customer can pay. The borrower can pay. Why we should do for this? Why we discussed earlier, initial stage. Due to some reason, either customer has defaulted, the reason can be rectified. By the way, first one we discussed, extend the period, reduce the loan installment, match the cash flow. That's called rescheduling. That's one of the methods. The other one is changing the any adverse conditions, adverse some adverse practices or policies which is affecting the loan repayment, that can be rectified, either from the bank side or from the customer side. Rearrange entire loan facility, rearrange entire facility to meet the loan installment. A customer can pay back. That's called restructuring. Right? Then restructuring exercise may involve restructuring or conversion of type or nature of the financing loan, such as overdraft or term financing loan, or for revolving financing loan and non-revolving financing loan, depending on the customer's ability to repay. When the customer needs that facility. Take this example, overdraft. We are given a permanent overdraft to a customer. Why we give you a permanent overdraft? It's a revolving facility. It's a revolving facility that to be used as and when required, and there's no loan installment repayment, only the interest has to be serviced. Those are the conditions. In this given an overdraft facility, we expect customer to utilize the overdraft limit within the limit, utilize and revolve. But we should be operated. But if a customer making the overdraft, withdrawing the maximum amount and not operating the overdraft, what inspires you? What tells us the customer does not need that overdraft any further. So what he had done is taken full amount and utilized for his purpose and not a single cent as installment is going to pay. So if the overdraft is not revolving, there are two problems. One is after 3 months, automatically the overdraft goes to NPA, non-perform. Secondly, whenever we give an overdraft facility, we give for 1 year period and revive once a year. Review whether the customer needed that or not. And we have some other terms and conditions to reduce the risk in the overdraft. So similarly, when it comes to restructuring, we are trying to apply these terms if the customer not utilizing the overdraft. Okay. So this exercise is to enable the customers to improve their cash flow and overcome financial difficulties. So restructuring will allow overcome financial difficulties. Customer to difficulty due to financial difficulties to rectify which to overcome these liquidity problems. Restructuring will help. Right. So what is restructuring means to change the entire credit structure in order to strengthen the recovery program. So what are the factors involved in restructuring? Number one, infusion of new capital. Infusion of new capital. Now, for example, customer has defaulted the facility due to lack of sufficient equity. Equity is not sufficient. Either it can be a customer has invested all his equity in permanent fixed capital. He may find difficulty on the business because working capital is not sufficient. So, to revive the business back to the business, working capital has to be infused. New working capital will be given. Now, normally we expect the customer to bring new capital. Right? We expect customer to bring his new capital equity. If he was able to bring the new capital, he wouldn't have default the facility. He would have infused in advance. He would have done that long ago. So we have to understand that we should not put the conditions the customer has to bring new capital. If he is having capital, of course, he would have invested. But in a limited liability company, public company, then we can ask the customer, the company to issue new shares and collect new capital. But no, most of the instances, these are public companies are defaulted in this nature. So private limited liability companies, partnerships, and sole proprietors. So therefore, they are finding difficult to put new capital. So finally, the bank has to invest new capital into that business. Bank has to give a capital. So the capital there can be two forms. One is equity capital, and the one is loan capital. So banks are giving loan capital. Capital by the way of a loan, long-term facility. And about 5 years or maximum 7 years, the loan can be given. Which has to be repaid back when the business is operating. What are the problems we are facing practically to infuse new capital, giving a fresh loan. There are certain institutional problems. However, for internal problem we are having, we are unable to do this. We are limited resource, what you call approaches because certain other things, our what you call internal policies and banks policies and conditions, our rules and regulations. Number one is whenever customer is defaulted a facility, the branch manager's delegated authority to enter in that customer for any further facility is withdrawn. Understood? If a customer has defaulted a facility, the installment has been not paid and loan has been transferred to NPA, branch manager's delegate authority for entertain that customer for any further facility is withdrawn. Authority. That's the first hurdle we are having. To entertain the customer. And if you can understand the customer problem and you have to structure a proposal to the management to what you call we have to infuse the information to the management that this is a need. Bank has to give this, then only we can recover the existing loan also. Otherwise, most time we don't have authority to enter in that customer. So you have struck your proposal to the same management, convince the management about the need of this. That's the first problem we are having about when enforcing new capital. So it is not normally we ask the customer to produce new capital. It never happens. The problem will not be solved. Okay. The second problem is the rescheduling. Second, what you call restructuring methodology is go for rescheduling. We already discussed this, extending the period. How to extend the period. Okay. Then third one is security of weak facilities. For the particular customer, we may have given some other facilities which have either not collateralized or under collateralized, under security. For example, we take granting a TOD. If the customer has given a TOD which has not been paid, it was in the default. Customer having given a guarantee loan, personal loan under the personal guarantee. Normally, we consider guarantees are weak securities. Then, letter of guarantees, also sometimes considered as weak facilities. So if you are granted any facility which you have a weak facility, that is the customer's ability to repay is under threat, we have option. Right? Weak facility, we have option to put all the facilities into one basket and covered by a collateral. All the facilities amalgamate and or keep as it is and cover by a collateral. Specifically from a property mortgage. From a property mortgage. Regarding a facility, all the facilities are covering up with the property mortgage. Or sometimes you may amalgamate certain facilities. For example, TODs are there. So you can add TOD add to the new loan and cover up the recover the OD. Right? guarantee loans. You cover up with a property mortgage or any other tangible security. That's called securitization of weak facilities. So that's another what you call restructuring methods. Things are available for restructuring. Then comes to the very important part is what we'll have to do with the accrued interest. Accrued interest. By the time the customer defaulted more than 3 installment, or maybe it can be 6 or 6 installment, the interest has been accumulated, which was not paid. Capital outstanding as well as the interest outstanding. So what I want to do with interest? Now we have got 3 options. We got 3 options to recover this unpaid interest. The first one is capitalization of the unpaid interest. Right? This is commonly we try to do this. That means that outstanding interest will be added to the capital. Outstanding interest added to the capital, and do amortization of program to recover on the future repayment plan. That is the first option. But customer may not like to this option because he has to pay interest on interest. He has to pay further interest on this interest. Therefore, customer may not like. Of course, for a smaller amount, shorter period, we may be able to negotiate with the customer and do the capitalization. Because whatever proposal in this restructuring, we have to get the customer's consent also. The customer is not given the consent, we can't do by forcibly. We can't do forcibly. The second option of recovering of unpaid interest is the granting an interest-free loan. Granting an interest-free loan. Now, this is a very common one. Most of the bankers actually apply this technology, this technique. That is the total outstanding amount of the interest as a date will be converted into a loan, installment repayment loan. Normally, we grant as an interest-free loan, but to recover the interest, we call it an interest-free loan, and which will be amortized in equal installment within 6 months. Maximum would be 1 year, depending on the customer's cash flow, repayment ability. Stretch the period. That means first we will recover the interest, and thereafter we try to recover the loan amount. During the recovery interest-free loan, interest-free loan, that is interest on interest accumulated interest, we may give a grace period to repay the loan, 6 months or 1 year. During that period, only the interest has to be serviced. Again, interest should not allow to be accumulated. Right? Interest-free loan is that. In practically, when we calculate the interest-free loan, we add some small amount like 5% as our cost of fund, future opportunity cost. We add to the capital amount, the interest outstanding. And with that, we amortize equal installment to pay on monthly basis. Right? So, the customer can be convinced to do this, the granting of interest-free loans. The third option available is interest waivers. Now, this is very most of the customers make request to do interest waivers. පොලිය කපලා දාන්න මුල් මුදල මං ගෙවන්න. පොලිය කපලා දාන්න. Most of the instances they ask for interest waivers. Now, when we consider for interest waiver, there are certain factors we have to take into consideration. Normally, we give an interest waiver for a customer, or they are unpaid accrued interest waiver for unpaid accrued interest. We entertain that where customer is financially in a greater difficult situation, is unable to sorry, is unable to pay the interest, his income is not sufficient. If you try to recover the interest component, he may not be able to continue with his business thereafter. Such conditions we have to look into. So interest waivers are given, taking into consider all these factors. When it is necessity to give an interest waiver, where customer is unable to revive his business if this interest is going to be interesting. So we'll negotiate interest waivers accordingly, where the customer's repayment abilities not favorable to put this interest, recover the interest. Right. Whenever we consider for an interest waiver, there are a number of factors we have to take into consideration. Number of factors has to be taken into consideration. Number one, to grant this facility to the customer, we have borrowed from a depositor. We have borrowed from a depositor. We say we have taken a term loan. We have got a term loan from a customer, depositor, to give this facility to this customer. To give this customer. Okay? That means we have already paid interest to the depositor. We are already got a cost. For this utilizing of this capital amount for this customer by the loan, we have borrowed from a depositor, our depositor. So we are already paid to the depositor the interest component. So we are already got a cost. We are already got a cost. So if you are giving interest waiver, are we going to forgo this cost? Which are already incurred. Are we going to forgo that cost? The first thing we have to consider about when you are talking about interest waiver. Secondly, the interest amount we recover, we reinvest for granting further credit facilities. We invest for grant further credit facilities, by which we can earn an interest. So if we are given an interest waiver, the capital we are losing and our opportunity cost, we are incurring an opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means opportunity to earn in further interest, future interest. We are going to forego. Our existing interest, we have to forego. Future income also we have to forego. To what extent we can accept this? To what extent we can accept it? Before granting interest waiver, I consider these two basic factors. The third important factor is, therefore, we view this option for a customer at the last resort. The customer have no way of paying. But we try to recover at least the cost of funds. That means we have to recover the cost of funds to adjust our cost. Right? So that means the interest waiver is partly partly recovered. Not all. We are now not giving a full interest waiver. Maximum possible we try to recover our cost of funds. Okay, right. So what are the practically when we are granting an interest waiver, what are the things to be taken into account? Practically how it should be applied. Interest waivers, part or complete waiver, will be given as a terminal benefit. As a terminal benefit. In other words, interest waivers are not adjusting when you go to a restructuring facility. Interest waivers are not giving advance. Customer may take the advantage of interest waiver and later on he may default the other loans. After. To overcome this situation, I will say it should be given as a terminal benefit. That means interest waivers are given and after that, that particular customer, that should be given as a last after paying all the facility, entire facility is paid fully. After paying all these facilities only, the interest waiver has to be adjusted. Until such time, you have to give the interest in the suspense account till the customer settles the full loan. It should not be given as concession. So interest waivers are considered in a case by case. For not all the customers. All the customers pay after that facility, but we should not entertain that. Depending on the customer's cash flow and ability, only we apply this one. And the interest waiver should be given as a terminal benefit, final option. Next important thing is when we grant an interest waiver, keep it carefully in mind that that concession is recorded in the crib. Restructuring facilities when restructured, we have to record in the crib report, and that will be there. That these interest waivers and the concession what we are given for recovery of this facility will be there in the crib report forever. It will not be removed. It will not be removed. Right? So that is an indicator given to other bankers that this customer having a financial difficulty and the bank has offered a concession as interest waivers to settle his facility. So any bank considering to grant a facility thereafter, they have to take a decision whether they are entertaining this customer or not. That's the number one. Number two, that if this customer after some time doing business, after doing, for example, after settling this facility and he's now established his business, he's doing very well and he's coming for a facility from us thereafter. Okay, we are coming for a facility after. Can we entertain that customer for a facility? Can we entertain? We can't. Why? He is still appearing in the crib. He is still appearing in the crib. So we have to take a decision whether, notwithstanding the fact that his name is in the crib, are we going to entertain the customer, or are we going to recover the concession given to that customer before entertaining for another few further. Okay, that means that's why keeping in the crib report this position, we are not removing that, we can't remove it. In a later, subsequent later date, if the customer comes for a best facility, we have the right to recover whatever granted as a concession. Either fully or partly, we can negotiate for it. Okay, so practically we have done that. Yeah. One of the customers defaulted and he was appearing in the crib, not from our bank, another bank, the commercial bank. So that customer, after about 5 or 6 years into Japan, and he started the business and he was okay. He was importing to yes, Sri Lanka heavy machineries, that is wheel loaders, backhoes, like the heavy machinery he was importing, and he was doing very good at that time. Development was taken place in our country, and we demand for those heavy machinery. So he came to me and asked for a facility, and I went to the crib report. I saw that he's appearing in the crib. Okay, then I said, if your name is appearing in the crib, I cannot entertain you. Only thing you can do is to remove your name from crib, repay that amount has to be repaid to that particular bank, not our bank, other bank. Okay, and settle it and come back, then I'll entertain you. So I recovered the loan for other bank because his name was in the crib. To entertain him to grant a facility, I did that. I could have just ignored that and given approval from the management that let be there. Now it's okay, you can grant. But as a banker, you have to keep our ethics. If a customer had difficulties those days, of course, at that time we had to get problem. But now he's overcome. So part of that at least it will pay off and entertain for income. So that's why this is important to record this R in the report. Rescheduling refers to what is different between rescheduling and the restructuring. Rescheduling refers to extending or lengthening of your loan tenure, resulting in revision of your multi-installment amount so that you pay a lesser sum each month. Meanwhile, restructuring involves changing the type or structure of your existing loan to help you improve your current cash flow. This is different between restructuring and scheduling. Let us go through about the rescheduling or restructuring. The new pandemic situation, and what is the question position? What are central bank guidelines given to us, and how we should go for this restructuring and rescheduling, and what is the moratorium and how it's applied. So let's just see what are the position of rescheduling and restructuring. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, various special assistance, financing, loan facilities, restructuring facilities, and a 6 months moratorium of businesses, small and medium enterprises, and individuals have been provided. Last year 2020, with this pandemic situation, most of the country was locked down for more than nearly about 3 months. So entire business community were facing difficulties. Banks were facing difficulties to recovery, and customers' loans more than 3 months is now in the default category. So therefore, the central bank came forward, giving to assistance to the banking sector to do restructuring and rescheduling of facilities for the customers and moratorium. Let us see how this has been applied in the 2020 September, applied in 19 March, April, up to September, then again it was extended for another 6 months. And presently, how it is in operation. The system provided would be able to maintain business operation of SMEs, protect their jobs and encourage domestic investment. So idea behind central bank is to SMEs, small and medium enterprises, which have been severely affected due to this pandemic situation, to give assistance, support to continue their business. From the bank's perspective, the rescheduling or restructuring can help the banks to reduce non-performing facility portfolios, introduce immediate write-back of a specific provision, and maximize credit recovery exercise as well. From the bank's point of view, the rescheduling and restructuring process will help us to reduce NPAs. A customer not paid for 90 days and over, it is considered as NPA. When the NPA portfolio increases, position is in the bank's position as getting deteriorated. To overcome this situation, as well as to recover, maximize the credit recovery exercise from the customers, certain provisions have been introduced. So, how banks can apply this and how bank has applied this, let's see. As to the customers, rescheduling or restructuring can help them to ease their cash flow, allow continuity of their businesses, and perhaps avoid any legal action. Okay, so when you restructuring and scheduling by the banks, customers' cash flow will be eased and help them to continue their businesses. Okay, so loan installment payment will be extended, giving moratorium. Therefore, customer may not have to pay loan installment on the due date. So therefore, the cash flow will be remaining to them for meet their working capital requirement day-to-day operations. So that's what the introduction of central bank guidance given for the banks to look into any business falling in trouble. They can do the rescheduling and restructuring. Now it's the need of the day, and to maximize the credit recovery and reduce the NPA levels, not to transfer to NPA customers. So what is this moratorium given by the government? How it has been practically applied? So moratorium refers to a deferment of payment installment by customers to banks without any charges or penalty. Right? Deferment of payment, that means extending the payment period, payment days, for a depending on the requirement given. This is moratorium given for 6 months, and then again September it was increased, extended for another 6 months till this year 2021 March. So moratorium is a part of the initiative that have been introduced by the banking institution to offer relief to customers due to COVID-19 pandemic situation. Okay. Right, let's, before I go to the other situation, let's see how it has been applied, this moratorium. Now, this moratorium is given, customers, the borrowers has to apply for this relief from the banks. So bank has provided 6 months, for example, for the first 6 months, moratorium has been given. Now, what the banks and the finance institution did end of the 6 months? Yeah, end of 6 months, what the banks did? The entire accumulated interest and installment has been debited to the loan account. Debited to the loan account. Now, what has happened subsequently? So later on, Central Bank has pointed out this is not the way you have to do. Grant an interest-free loan to recover on subsequent period. It should be the way. But most of the banks have done for 2 to 3 months that loans were debited to the account and interest accumulated for that particular loan installment also. in the accounts. There are a lot of legal repercussions came out because of this. Number one, when you debited to the loan account, you cannot reverse that item without board approval. You cannot credit whatever you debited, you cannot credit back without a board approval. Secondly, from the day one, interest has been accumulated. So customer has to pay interest on interest. Customer actually fallen from the pan to fire. Most of the customers. There are a number of cases came to me for consultation. I'll use this case, some of these cases. One of the cases where customer is a vehicle importer. It's a vehicle importer. More than 20 years he was in the business. And he had a 3.5 million worth of OT facility, government overdraft, and with the LC facility. And that facility was taken against the property mortgage. Property value was at that time the value revalued after this time is about 5 million. Now, since last year, vehicle imports are banned. So no new vehicles are coming in. LCC Chahia opened, right? Bought some vehicles, about 10 vehicles, still lying in the yards in Japan. Cannot export to Sri Lanka because the import banned. So his cash flow is stuck there. Here, no business because no vehicles available in the yard. So he had run the business, expenditure on maintaining operation expenses had incurred, paying salaries and all these things, but no income at all. Top of that, last October, 1st of October, the bank has debited 1.8 billion rupees as OD interest. A moratorium given for 6 months. End of the 6 months, this interest has been debited to the government overdraft facility. So what has happened? The limit, OD limit has been exhausted. So the system can the interest rate up to the limit agreed interest, above the limit your interest. Already. So he has applied for the convert this into a loan. It took more than 3 months to consider that converting to OD. Loan. Until such time, the interest is accumulated, everything. Now it has been converted into loan, month installment has to be. So the bank has worked out month installment from the day one. What are the fundamentals of lending we get? Cash flow based recovery. Is there cash flow to pay this customer? Imports has been banned, business has come to standstill, but no income at all. Bank is now installment are debited, it's accumulating, it's not paid. After 3 installment goes bad, what happened? That loan goes to, the moratorium loan goes to NPA. So I had to intervene in that particular bank and I had to explain, but there's no one to listen. Customer to give an ikayo ko kumari. Kumaday si gawan income me kang natta. Ade hemo gyal siddha wala. Kohingar hoyla gawan no. See the bankers. Bankers heavy street lenders. Mas raat kala billana bankers. So one thing, I told the customer, write ombudsman, ask him for relief. In order you can understand that. We have to, I told you, the basic concept is look at from the customer's point of view. කොච්චර ගෙවන්න ඕනද කොහොමද ගෙවන්නේ කියලා බලලා you try to work. So my personal view, this moratorium has to be given as a terminal benefit. Customer business එක re-establish වුණාට පස්සේ either you can go for recovery or else you got concept එක කතා කරලා do nothing කියලා or else එහෙම නැත්නම් කරන්න තියෙන්නේ customer මොකද කරන්න යන්නේ property එක විකුණලා recover කරන්න යන්නේ and defaulted so customer පාරට කළ දාන්නේ බැංකුව හදන්න එන alternative එකක් නැද්ද alternative නැද්ද alternative last the government gave till this end of this month this year vehicles were not allowed to import now it has been extended to 2022 December 2022 December nakam me business එක vehicle business එක revive වෙන්නේ නැහැ and the government has to come like in the industry government came forward and establish a fund to safeguard these customers. Something has to be done. So all the vehicle importers has to get together and ask for some relief. Anyway, so this is practical what's happening today. It is not actually rescheduling or restructuring. It's merely forcing the customer for a solution, not with the customer's consent. Well, so let's talk about the finally reclassification of credit facilities after rescheduling, restructuring. If we are recovered fully, interest and outstanding balance fully settled, we can transfer back to non-performing section, the two performing section, right? From NPA and transfer to performing section. So by transfer to performing section, what will happen? Whatever provision you made will be returned back, reversed back as a indirectly showing in the P&L as an increase of profit. Okay, that's the advantage. Reclassification. If it's completely settled, balance fully settled, then you can revise transfer back to performance section. If rescheduled or restructured, only after satisfactory performance during the period specified under the first payment. If a facility was in the special mention category, තිබිලා interest settlement එක දාවන to pay the installment and the interest in installment, right? After 90 days. If the first 90 days to see whether the customer, according to the first payment time, have been made. Right? 90 days after that, the payments are coming regular, then you can transfer back to regular section, special mention category. If substandard and doubtful category, it's 180 days. When the facility is in the substandard category or doubtful category, after the first installment is paid, after 180 days only it is allowed to transfer to performance section. If it's lowest category, it is 360 days. Okay, right. So that's all about the rehabilitation part, rescheduling, restructuring. Next session we'll be discussing about uh, the business turnarounds. What is turnaround? How to apply turnaround? What are the principles of turnaround? To discuss. So any questions? Yeah, any questions? So everyone, yatak pasaba enter. What question again? Can you switch on the mic and ask, please? What's the question, Sevandi?
So just a clarification.
Yes.
So you said when the client is in the loss category, that is 300, and just to check whether my understanding is correct. When the client is in the 360-day category, and once you restructure and the client makes the first installment and the interest payment to go back into regular status, it takes 360 days, is it?
That's right. That's right. After 1 year only you can transfer to regular section.
Okay, correct. Thank you, sir.
Sir, is that what we call the monitoring period?
Yeah, this
Normally,
is observation period where the customer is actually he has come to an agreement, no? Rescheduling
yes.
and restructuring, we come to an agreement. So we have to see whether the customer is full complying with that agreement.
Okay.
And the
Until
period is
such
given,
time.
yeah, Bank has given a period depending on how long they have been in the default section.
Okay. Okay. Same period he has to be in the non-performing section,
Exactly.
and then only he can revert to the performing section.
That's it. Exactly. That's it.
Thank you.
So what is why is that? What is the reason for that?
Reason one, again, customer can default. After paying 2 or 3 installment, if you default again, you have to reverse back, no?
Yes.
So then if you are going to reverse back, it will not be in the same category. It is either substandard or the substandard category. Only 3 installment, no?
Oh, right, sir. So let's say someone is in the loss category, and then through the reschedulement, they make the first payment of the installment and the interest.
Yeah.
Then, as soon as they do that, do they move to? So it's going back now 360 days. The first installment. Do they move back to the substandard category? And like that, the next.
No, not reverse back.
Okay.
It will be same in the same loss category. Yeah, till 360 days over, the customer will be in the loss category. Okay? Got the point?
Yeah.
Till the 360 days is in the loss category, till first year is over, he will be in the loss category. After that only, he will be reversed back to the regular category. Okay, so we'll break for it. Any questions? Okay, now one more point I had to take into you. That is now after this when you do reschedulement and restructuring, what are the documentation procedure? Nobody asked that question. Are you with me? Are you with me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What is the documentation procedure? Now when you extended the period, okay, do we have to have a fresh loan agreement?
We type
New agreement.
No.
Yes, sir.
offer letter.
Yes or no? Okay, we don't have to prepare a fresh loan agreement. Only you
Offer.
can have a supporting document saying that period has been extended for up to that date, right? So the loan agreement will be extended to that date. If there's a mortgage bond, okay, if there's a mortgage bond, then you have to extend the period by a supplementary mortgage. Execute a supplementary mortgage bond to extend the period. It does not mean stamp duty is not needed, as well as not necessary to register, but we can register, that won't be a problem. That is the one option. Even though you are not extended the period in the mortgage bond, till you cancel the mortgage bond and register the land registry, that validity of the mortgage bond will be extended automatically. The mortgage bond will not be expired. Okay?
So do we have to get a offer letter?
Yeah,
No need.
no, if you is a restructuring, if you are restructuring, you have to get a fresh application has to be filled with the new terms and conditions. If it's a restructuring, not for the rescheduling. New loan agreement has to be signed, right, with the inclusion of new terms and conditions. That's all. Okay, right. So we'll have a small break and back at 15 minutes time, we'll continue with the other session. Okay? Right. Next item we are going to discuss on the business turnaround, rehabilitation. Under rehabilitation, what is business turnaround? How do we apply for business turnaround? What are the concepts in business turnarounds? Okay. Business turnaround, before that, any business work hard, owners work hard to deserve their success. So they have here money, self plans, time, and strategy, energy, everything is spent to deserve the success. But sometimes you may find that success is not there. We have a plan for success. Failures for most businesses happen as they erode over time until the core crumbles and mission is unrecognizable. So we have to accept that businesses are not run forever. Although businesses are started to run forever, it has a lifespan. So any business have a successor plan. And for success and successor plan will have a survival. But the primary business objectives are increase their sales. By increasing sales, they increase their profits. To increase their profit, they have to increase their customer base. So any business, the primary objective is to increase their customer base, which can be increased sales and profits. That's the objective of any business. When, what is a sick unit we discussed earlier? There's a problem with the business of the customer. There's a problem with the business of the customer. Some consider that it is better to continue the failed business and recover. That's what we discussed a little while ago. Rehabilitation and rescheduling, where we try to continue the customer's business, failed business, and to recover our position. But some want to fail business quickly. Some banks, financiers, they are not bothered about the continuity of the business. They want to take their pound of flesh. So they try to, even they are bothered about the business, they kill the business to get their share. That's what we can see most of the time. We are like Shylocks, try to recover. Even though business is failed, it's not better for us. But all are willing to pay for the attempt to recover the business. Almost, if I look at all our bankers or financiers, all are trying to attempt to recover the business. So most recently, we say that our recovery plans are threatening to sell their properties, dissolve their assets, and try to recover part of it. Do businesses continue forever without fail? Any of the business can you see that without fail? How many businesses that exist today are more than 200 years, 100 years, 50 years, 25 years old? Lower amounts, of course, we have enough. 25, 50 years, of course, we can see. But beyond that, we can't see much. In Sri Lanka, we take Sri Lankan our businesses, our own Sri Lankan businesses. Most of the businesses what we are having for more than 100 years now are not Sri Lankan businesses. Those are British companies which have been established in Sri Lanka for estate agencies, as estate agencies. After some time, they take over the position and they get into the business. So still they are continuing the business, but originally they are not Sri Lankan. If you see what is Sri Lankan business, how many businesses are continuing for more than 100 years? Very, very few. Pera Sons, they are manufacturing bread for 128 years. Don Caroli's, 150 years. Right? In Dilapala, it's 125 years. There are number of businesses which is between 150, that is 75 years. These are 60 years. Maliban, Harishchandra, 80 years. Likewise, some businesses are continuing more than 50 years. What's the secret behind? Why businesses are most of the businesses are not even 25 years. Less than 25 years, they fail. Why the reason? As bankers, lenders, we have to understand the what you call reasons behind why the businesses are failing. It is like a life cycle, like a human being. So industrial life cycle we call rise and fall of customers' interest. If you look at a human being, okay, start with toddling, in a teenager, growing up, mature, and trying to come. So last person is very older person. After that, next one that's not shown here. That's a fall. So if you can see, it's a cycle. It's going a cycle like that. This cycle, if you put it any business has life also the same cycle. Same way. Starting with toddler and growing up, come to a teenager, then matured, then after that little by little, gradually decreasing, finally closer. Any business you can see this. No businesses, any business which I have something called future like look, that businesses will be survive. We take even a human being. Now if I come to this stage, right? When you come to this stage, what will you call matured? And gradually our physical appearance is getting changed. Biological systems are getting changed. And ultimately, that change over a period of time, the length of this period, we don't know. Some businesses are closing down at this level, Some businesses are coming to this level, some are going to this level, some are more than that also worth. So what we have to understand is the reason behind. It's called product life cycle theory. What we have to understand, a product or an industry, it has a life cycle. So in the introduction period, that is a picking up. Introduction period, it is slightly growing up. Then it has a life period of time. After that, it will be grow very fast. Green color, growing fast. So growth period. Then it comes to maturities, where it comes to stagnating. Okay, after maturity, it's time declining. From here, it's going to the death. So businesses taken, it has the same life cycle. Any product, it has the same life cycle. Over a period of time, it will change. If the business understand that it has come to the maturity, it has come to this point, maturity point, stagnating, and try to change the product or industry norms, then it can go up again. Let it come to some down, and again it will pick up and go up. Now this is called re-engineering process. A successful re-engineering process. I told you, Terra and Sons have in business for last 130 years, 130 years. But what is the secret behind the Terra and Sons to grow in the same pattern? Continue to be in the business world 130 years. Yeah? It is the understanding the market, understand the customer needs, and changing the product accordingly. If you look at, is it the same product which have been started 130 years before? When you go Pereira Bakari, Pereira Basunai, who in Melbourne Street started his business and manufactured some bread, put inside that bucket or casket, and going house to house to sell the bread. Is it the same bread today as in the market? Oh, completely changed. Completely changed. Over a period of time, the customer needs are changed. Accordingly, product life cycle also goes off, a new product is coming out. So the new product will be going ahead. If you look backward to see the same product will be changing over a period of time. I have a good example to this. So take the case of the Lux soap. The Lux soap of now 132 years. Lux soap in the market for 132 years. Still, that's the market leadership. How it has gained it? How it has gained it? It is a secret behind that. The bankers has to understand that. Right? Bankers has to understand that. Now, I can remember when I was very small age, my 5 or 6 years, whenever we go to a parent, grandma's place, my uncles and aunts, they used to buy these filmfare magazines. So there we go to the small children. We like to go through these pictures of different actors of those days. Dilip Kumar, Madhubala, Meena Kumari. So in one of the advertisements we have seen the Lux with Meena Kumari. This is 1950s. Is the same Lux are you using today? Not the same Lux. It has been over a period of it, a number of changes taken place. And I analyze this position about this, the growth of this Lux soap, firstly creamy soap. In 19 80s, 1980s, they changed the market segmentation depending on the market requirement. Like certain 4 categories: white color creamy soap, pink color rosy soap, then green color herbal soap, and gold color is called honey, bee honey. And to market this product, there was number of advertisements in terms of TV series. So they have identified certain market segment to use this particular product. For example, the white color one creamy soap used by Meena Jayakodi. So older generation is a product. Geeta was using green color herbal product. Geeta Kumar Singh. Green color herbal one. Yasoda Imaladharma was using pink color rose. Rose of happy. Susin Samara Agari. Then this Sanjeevani came to the scene there. Just entered, very young. She said, I am Pap Chikarani, me Penidapulaks. So they differentiate the product for the market segmentation and change the product. Now that generation is over. After that, it came with Nelum Malavageva, Nilianganiva, actresses using. Now, not actresses, who are Kyange Sabak. So the product life cycle goes like that. So if they change the product according to the customer need, they can survive. As a bank, how can we identify this thing? Any business, it has a life cycle. It will grow up and it will decline sometime. According to some philosophies, in most of the countries, even our Asian countries, the family businesses are not going more than 3 generations. Family businesses are moving more than 3 generations. When you look at our products, for 30 years, 40 years back, those are no more in the market. No survival at all. It has been changing. So, as we lenders, how to identify these changes? It is not that difficult. It is simple. When you analyze past performance of a business, if a past performance of the business, all the ratios, if you look at the ratios, if you are having a growing trend, a slow movement, that's introduction period. The ratios are moving very slowly, not fast. But in the growing age, that last 3 or 4 years time, you will see huge leap growth in the ratios. Then when it comes to stagnation point, slightly again come down and it is start changing, very slight changes for a period, 1 year or 2 years. That is the come to maturity. After that you may see that ratios are declining. That means the business has started decline. If any business consider this one, come to maturity and change their pattern, product, and they can survive. You may have observed that most of the star class hotels, they are changing their furniture, layout, everything once in 5 years. Look at the jewelry shops at C Street or anywhere, they are also changing their face every 5 years. Same product, same mining though, different bottle. So it is trying to attract the customers. So if we see that this changes, at what point you are lending to this customer, that's important. Most of the customers that comes to us when it comes to declining time. So that's a dangerous time. If there's a no strategy of the customer to turn around, then our lending will going to be end up with a disastrous. If you see any improvement, increase in trend, that's the time you can invest in that business. You can earn, take it back. When it comes to maturity, stagnating, you should not go for long-term facilities. Short-term facilities, medium-term facilities, maximum should be enough. So depending on the life cycle of the business, we have to understand that our lending has to be matched accordingly. Otherwise, our NPA will go up. Okay, so this is the principle behind life cycle business. What is business turnaround? Business turnaround is an informal management-led reversal process to prevent a financially struggling or poorly performed business from insolvency and liquidation by returning it back to profitability and restructuring debt using out-of-court debt negotiation process that outside the legal framework. Without going to courts, businesses can be retrieved. Businesses can be turned around where the struggling businesses, poorly performing businesses, which is heading for insolvency or liquidation, that can be turned around. The turnaround principle there, understand, apply for businesses. It can be a small business, SME, to a large corporate. Business can be turned around. Different regimes. Okay. Business turnaround involves reviving a struggling or probably a dying business, a business which has come to the declining point, the curve has been coming down, so the ratios are all are decreasing year by year. That is the period where the business has come to struggling to survive. This implies taking steps that would turn a company's distressed financial position into a healthy and profitable one. The business turnaround principle will change the business product, change the business pattern, change the management, everything set up to take up the position into turnaround. So in Sri Lanka, we have got a number of businesses which have done this turnaround principle successfully operating. I'll give the example. It is widely believed that businesses turnaround is a short-term action designed to ease short-term financial difficulty. Mostly, the problems in the short-term nature can be addressed quickly and businesses can be bring back to the normal situation. Especially SMEs. And again, on the other hand, a company that struggles to meet up with the short-term and long-term obligation is obviously dying and needs a turnaround. There are some organizations, the long-term obligations getting deteriorating. So you have to apply even for a long-term solution has to be going. Now, I'll give an example. When in 1950s, 1960s, the largest businesses in Sri Lanka was Cargill's Millers. You know, the biggest, what you call supermarkets, those types. We call, and how do you call supermarkets? Those we call as branch, large network businesses. And there are medium size was there, like corners, apothecaries, medium size ones. So these businesses over a period of time, you would have seen that it was dying. Even now, if you see that building, only the building is there. Some businesses are still dying. When it comes to Cargill's, it virtually closing down. Only the property value was there, to survive that business. What he did in the Staples Road, that's a constant slave, that's Slave Island. Earlier, the Colonel Pereira started Colonel Supermarket at Apothecary's building in Fort. Supermarket concept was bought in Sri Lanka. Immediately, the Cargills took over that. Started first supermarket as Staples Road at Slave Island. Then they shifted going island-wide. They turned around, their business. From Cargills, the traditional clientele, they changed entire pattern, brought supermarket concept. Today, one of the largest supermarket chain, the Cargills. Similarly, if you look at Browns, they did the turnaround. John Keels, they did the turnaround. When they were losing their business, they divert their business to something else. They started new business. Right? So a company that struggles to meet up with the short and long obligation time and is a turnaround. That's called business turnarounds. When a company that has experienced a period of poor performance moves into a period of financial recovery, it's called turnaround. Due to poor performance, sales are declining, business is deteriorating, and if they think, if you come to know that position, if you observe that position by the management, they may apply this turnaround principles. They are looked into what are the areas, they are the weakening areas, what are the weakening products. That products has to be killed, that services has to be removed, and what are the products mostly required, or there's a market to sell, they go into that. So turnaround may also refer to a recovery of a nation, region, economy, or after a period of recession or stagnation. So this turnaround can be applied for a country also. Right? If a correct economics look at our country's position today, they can do this turnaround principle apply. And the stagnation or recession can be override. Similarly, it can refer to the recovery of an individual whose personal finance situation improves after some time. There are certain people who have been fallen into bottom line, and after they'll be picking up. That's turnaround. So this principle applies to any business or a country, even to an individual, you can apply. Turnaround principle. The business turnarounds are reversal of falling or failing results, sales and profit through fundamental change. Typical turnaround activities includes selling of assets, unnecessary, unwanted assets, unproductive assets, disposing, closing some product lines and building others. Where certain product lines are not saleable, there's no marketable, and they do some closing of that product and try to revive that, building others. Then changing the workforce, adjusting the workforce according to the current requirement. There may be certain workforce which are not making much of a productive effort for a change. So that people has to be given a golden handshake, POC, and removed. Competitive repositioning. Any business has to look into the competitive environment. Okay, when this Coral Pera started Coral Supermarket first, then picked up by Cargills, then the Keels, then Apico, likewise, the competitive positioning have been increased. But what is the strategy? strategy to survive. We can see even more supermarkets are coming up, spa and other things are coming up. Still, the competitive position maintained by these older business people, older supermarkets. Why? They apply turnaround principles. New pricing policies. In the competitive environment, the pricing policies can be applied, has to be applied. When operations improvement and the refinancing. Operations has to be adjusted according to the needs and redesign, restructure and refinance, put new finance into the business. So this business turnaround is the picking up a business without going to the zero. You can see the graph is coming to the, if you're allowed to go, it's go closure. But the changes taking place can improve the business further. Business turnaround is a process needed to bring about those changes necessary to solve the business operational, strategic, and financial problems that will restore the struggling business to its former financial health and viability. The business, bring the business back to normalcy situation. Operational, strategic, financial. The process is normally driven by the business owners with the focus on improving management, profitability, cash flow, productivity, and revenue. All areas has to be looked into. When you turn around, improving the management, decision-making pattern, profitability and the cash flow, productivity and the revenue are key areas to be looked into. The business's turnaround process is normally used in the early stages of business decline, poor performance and financial distress. So the strategy normally advantage apply where business early stages decline, that is startup businesses. Startup businesses decline can be turned around into a healthy performance business. Funds are generated internally to ensure the business has sufficient cash to see it through the next few months while business turnaround plan is implemented. Without borrowing from outside, it will be costly. Try to internally generate funds, right, to short a period needed to implement that. So business turnaround implemented, internally cash flows and other income sources will be generated. It will be improving the position of the business without allowing falling down. All have to help. Right. There are certain steps introduced by the business turnarounds commonly, in general. If you follow these 7 proven turnaround strategy steps, you don't have to worry about your financial future. This is advice given to businessmen. When you apply this step-by-step proven process, that will turn around your business. So you can survive the temporary short-term crisis, regain your profitability, confidence, and save your business. What needed is here, still small business, startup businesses, to understand why the crisis, temporary short-term crisis. And while looking into the crisis situation, remove the cause and regain the profitability. This process works in any business, but was specially designed to work in smaller businesses and are not based on same theory or turnaround method used by big companies. So these 7 steps are for the SMEs. Straight away for SMEs. Right, what are 7 steps? Number 1, discover your position and what caused the problem you are dealing with. This is, we started with that last session. Identify the problem and what caused the change, why it has happened, how it has happened, when it has happened, who is responsible. It's 5 how, why, what, when, the formal questions. Identify the position, understand the position, understand the problem. Making sure that everybody fully understand, commit and support the situation. Everybody has to be, all the stakeholders has to be, understand situation and give the support. Prepare a relationship development plan, creditors will support. When you do a proper plan, turnaround plan, your creditors, suppliers will definitely support to come out of the problem. They help you to improve their business. Fourth step, stabilizing the business finance, maintain positive cash balance while creating highly profitable core. Where is important part is mostly the business turnaround. This part has to be established very carefully. Balance while creating highly profitable core. That means cash balance. That means businesses has to understand that credit sales and debtors will definitely destabilize the business. To increase the sales, increasing the credit sales, it's a disaster. So any business can increase the credit sales depending on their availability of the working capital. Internal working capital position is good, they can increase credit sales. Without proper working capital backing or stable backing working capital, try to improve the profit by increasing credit sales is disastrous. Increase profitability, focus on profit and cash flow of the revenue. Cash flow means inflow minus outflow. Profit is adjusting for all expenses. So cash flow is the important for a business to maintain their liquidity position. So liquidity is carefully handled, then the turnaround will be success. Increase sales without spending more on advertising. Right? Without spending, increase the sales. Implement your business turnaround strategy step with the precision and consistency. The same turnaround strategy step can be used to take a very successful business to the next level or help an underperforming business to reach its profitability. Now, this concept of working capital. What's the difference between turnaround and the restructuring? Now, turnaround also extension of restructuring. Turnarounds make a period of improvement while bringing stability to the business future. Business pre-insolvency and the turnaround, business turnaround are pre-insolvency and informal action taken by the business. Restructuring is, however, a range of formal insolvency process aimed at helping business in severe financial distress. Right? Restructuring, the turnaround is extension of a restructuring. Same principle, but in a broad scale. What are the turnaround strategies? Strategic should be measurable. The linear, not driven by task and to do list, result and focus on cash flow. That's the basic strategy. The focus efforts are see the opportunities, isolate the problems. Make opportunities clear. Take the opportunities, turn into business, and problems, take it out. When you develop a strategic plan, analyze financial reports, go and see position, the customers, and industry stands. Analyze the prioritize greatest impact and 80-20 rule. What is 80-20 we have discussed earlier in one of our slides. That is 80% of the profit brings 25% effort. Okay. That is called 80-20 rule, or there's a economic principle called right, I'll tell that. So there's an 80-20 rule, that is 80% of income brings by 20% of effort. Small effort can be earned a lot. Right? Quick wins and time equal to cash money. Plans are great, but implements is the key. When most of the time we see people are making plans which have to be implemented. Simple tactics, effective tactics, critical tactics, stop tactics, unique tactics. Flow of a plan, implementation is important. What makes a plan successful? First, communication, confidence, consistency, clarity, and finally celebration of the achievement. Right. Let us do the base, what are the issues and what are the solutions for business turnaround, specifically in Sri Lankan environment. How we can apply this turnaround principle in Sri Lanka. What are the real issues? First issue is the stakeholders fail to identify the potential reasons for failure, and they fail to differentiate between acceptable but non-controllable factors and unacceptable but controllable factors. All the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders, I give you the next slide. Identify the potential reasons for failure. Why it is failure? They fail to differentiate between the acceptable reasons and the controllable factors. Unacceptable but controllable. Certain factors controllable but unacceptable. Right? So, difference between these two not understood properly. Second issue comes businesses that can be recovered with potential benefit to all stakeholders are allowed to fail. There are some, I told you, the first slide we discussed. There are certain people, certain bankers, certain financiers are not considering about the business, which can be recovered. Potential benefit to all the stakeholders. But they take their child of pound of flesh. Only they look for their recovery. Most of the time we have seen, most of the bankers are responsible for non-survival of certain businesses. When the properties are mortgaged to the bank and taken a facility, the moment the customer defaulted, without looking, analyzing what the probable problems which can be solved, with the benefit to all, by going for recovery way by identifying action, selling the property and to recover the assets. This is this was addressed some time back, I think. Remember, in the Recovery of Bank Loan Special Provision Act number 2011, as amendment came, no? Can you remember? So this amendment background was this: most of the banks straight away went for the parade without doing any effort to do other recovery options. That's one of the reasons this parade was changed in 2011, Amendment Act number 1. Okay. The third issue is the process of liquidation asset will destroy and will take big share of the value. This reduces the value available to the key stakeholders. More of what happened, for example, we file action in the courts. And the court action drags for years and years. No action has been solved, brought to solution within 5 years. It's more than 5 years every time. Over this period, the cost on the case liquidation is accumulating. On one side, interest is accumulating. On the other side, legal charges. Now tell me, when bank file action against for a customer, the bank will hire first-class lawyers, a high value of money, professionals, legal professional to go to the courts and fight the case again for the bank. Large amount they pay, lakhs and lakhs. Who pays that money? Who pays the legal expenses? Will bank will absorb? Never. It will be limited to loan account of the customer. So customer has to pay legal fees to protect himself in the courts for his legal expenditure, as well as bank legal expenditure also yet it varied. So end of the case, when the case is put for, if it's a mortgage for sale, what is the realizable value of that property? Sometimes the loan value has been over in the property value. So you can understand that the liquidation procedure will be also take long time and costly. So there was nothing available for the stakeholders thereafter. The stakeholders do not agree and the recovery is difficult. So whatever proposal we give, sometimes stakeholders, they are not agreeing. Sometimes they agree, but cannot be implied. This is another question. Then recovery is difficult. Then should that business be protected? The question is yes or no. Answer. Should be protected? Yes or no? If so, who would bear the cost of protecting the business? The stakeholders? Why should the stakeholder protect the business? Very sound simple answer. Do a CBA, cost benefit analysis. Cost benefit analysis. Work out and see what is the cost for that business to turn around. Whether this is benefit or not. The benefit is more than the cost, then protect it. If the cost is high, greater than the benefits you are going to gain, then no need to protect that business. And that's the clear solution behind this. So any business, any person, even normal people, even bankers, anybody applies a CBA concept, cost benefit analysis. Very simple theory. Now you go to shops, you want to buy a ballpoint pen. Cost of the pen is 10 rupees. Before you buy that pen, how many times scribble and see whether it's writing properly? What are you going to do? You're trying to balance the cost and the benefit. 10 rupees, whether it's worth 10 rupees, whether write properly, whether it's worth 10 rupees. That's all. Simple. Our ladies are going to Godel to buy a dress. So look at a dress. How much is 3,500? Immediately we will pay and buy? No. They ask on the sales girl that how many of this type of dresses are available inside the stores? About 10. Oh, the hati in a moment the value can. So you decide not to buy. So cost and the benefit. always be analyzed. The human nature. So apply to the organizations also. Simple. For another case I give, the most of the bank managers are grumbling about short of staff. Most of our managers grumbling about short of staff. They are asking more staff. Well, have you calculated the cost of one staff, employing one staff to a branch will cost how much? And how much he will be giving a return to your bank? For example, you take a staff assistant, banking assistant. So the cost of monthly cost, medical cost, overtime, and other supernumerary benefits put together, what is the monthly cost? Leave it out the capital expenditure, giving a computer and a table chair, everything, or the direct cost. Whether that employee can give you a return double that amount for a month, then you recruited that employee is beneficial for the bank. If not, it's a cost, not a gain to the branch. Okay, so do this CBA, cost benefit analysis, before you take doing an expenditure. Any expenditure for that matter. Whether that expenditure will give us a return. There are certain expenditures that will not give a return, but the benefits are long term. So identify the benefits. Okay, who are the stakeholders of a business? Stakeholder of business, financial institutions, the owners, consumers, employees, creditors, government, economy, suppliers, and the banks and financial institutions. These are the direct stakeholders of any business. Right? Now, if you take second round, employees and their family members, creditors and their manufacturers, government and government employees, economy as a whole. Likewise, there are a number of stakeholders for a business. If any business fails and closes down, how many of stakeholders are getting affected? If a business closes down, how many of these are affected? Take the case of government-owned businesses. Now, Tulhiri textile mill. Who got a textile mill? So large businesses which are in Sri Lanka we had. The closing down that business itself have affected how many people in the country? If you take large businesses, the effect, the people who have been benefited though not are very large. Right? There are certain organized institutions in Sri Lanka, government-owned large institutions that done the turnarounds. For example, Galway Sugar Factory. This turnaround with the assistance of LOLC and another company took over and start manufacturing sugar once again. Okay, so Galway can manufacture 10% of the sugar needs of the Sri Lanka. So we can cut down our imports by 10%. Right? Only one institution, which belongs to the government. It has been closed down for a number of years, and last government, it has been revived. So who are the owners? Government as well as the two private owners. So what are the benefits of that sugar company? Not only sugar, what are the byproducts of sugar company? Who are the other suppliers? The sugarcane cultivators. They are the suppliers who they are also getting benefited. Then byproducts of this company, what are those? Number one, they they crush the sugar cane and surplus water is given to the water boat, and there is for a day about 150,000 liters water is pumped out to give drinking water for the people who are in the area. The husk is the fertilizer, as well as a animal feed. Sugar itself, when you sugar, what you call purified, the certain portion removed, that's called ethanol. The alcohol part is the ethanol. Okay, earlier ethanol, the ethanol made out of sugar. We didn't import. Recently, we started import after when this company was closed down, then only ethanol has to be imported. Then ethanol mixed for alcohol, again a gal going up on the galla rakugiani. Alkin was in a galloing up ethanol. And it is byproduct for petrol can be used as a what do you call fragrances. So number of benefits. So therefore, the large business turnaround is a wealth to the country. So that's the idea behind most of the government-owned large-scale companies that try to revive again. Okay, this turnaround done well, what would be the favorable impact to the economy? Better business environment. Better business environment you can create. Lower cost of credit. Lower cost of credit, why? The NPL levels have come down, cost of credit is coming down. Better utilization of economic resources. Right? We've got 10% of the sugar is remanufactured. If they can increase 25% next year, so our economic resources can be saved. And entrepreneurs will spend the time on business, not avoiding the bankers and lenders. Better usage of foreign exchange. There are some of the benefits coming from the business turnaround. However, business turnaround encounters several special problems in Sri Lanka. What are the problems we are facing when you go for business turnarounds? Number one, attitude of the banks. Banks in Sri Lanka generally think that restructuring is merely adding the accrued penal interest and divided by 60. Sometimes when they are in good mood, they even set the repayment period of balance loan by a couple of years. There's no professional approach for restructuring. Only outstanding loan added to the capital divided by period, 60 years, I told you earlier, delegate authority. And this is the amount you have to pay. Right? That's how we do most of the things. If you look at the corporate segment in the banks, most of the banks, we find that the large corporate borrowers, every 3 years or 4 years, they do revaluation of assets and absorb the outstanding, what you call defaulted facility into that and do a what called reschedulement. Revalue the asset and do a reschedulement. Loan is not paid. Loan is expired. In debtors' attitude, debtors default generally fear the banks and being under pressure often agree to arrangement that they cannot meet, and the problem continues. Most of the defaulters are fear of the banks. And whatever arrangements they said, they'll agree, sign and come back, but never implemented. That's a second problem we're having. Third issue, faulty managerial focuses. The business sector does not understand that the turnaround requires a different managerial focus. They forget to concentrate on cash flow and capacity. Financial resources are kept the necessary resources available and continue to think only for customers, products, production. Most of the business must understand the turnaround needed a separate managerial focus. Most of the defaulted businesses try to maintain their customer base and the productions. Sometimes you may feel unnecessary or unproductive asset are still manufacturing without looking at the customer needs. The fourth issues are no specialized turnaround attempt. Unlike developed turnaround regimes, troubled companies in Sri Lanka never have two teams at the top, one to run the business and to negotiate the turnaround. There are no two different management team to understand this turnaround principles. No protection for new debt is very, very common. The banks sometimes quite slightly reluctant and wary about funding ailing businesses because there is no protection for the subsequent debt capital over the previous states. එකසාරයක් පොල්ල දීපු එක කුණු කාර්යමයි ආයේ තව ලෝන් එකක් දෙන්න බැංකුව කැමති නැහැ. I told you earlier, this is very, very pathetic situation. Why? Once a customer is defaulted, the branch manager delegated authority has been withdrawn. And whatever proposal he brings, management at top level, and if they cannot convince, will be rejected. I think new leads are under risk. A new management at a risk. New infusion of management skill almost impossible because new managers will also be held liable for all past sins of the ailing company, including any unpaid strategic use. Hence, many managers are reluctant to this. Now, when the government want to give the Tulhiria factory to Kabul, that is Pakistan company took over this Tulhiria complex. It's a massive complex for 100 acres. Not only manufacturing plant, training institute, hostels, the massive complex. Those resources are not utilized for the benefit of the country. But luckily now, the mass holdings are taken over as a textile training center. Textile training center. Training, what do you call, most of the factory workers there. So this is the problem. To take over that business, all balance sheet has to be cleared off. When we go to Kabul, this manufacturing to manufacture textile in Sri Lanka, all the liabilities taken over by the government. Only the assets are given. Even recently negotiating it for the government is negotiating to this the paper corporation, Varachini paper corporation, they're negotiating with the company where all the liabilities will be absorbed by the government. Otherwise, new management has risk to pay these liabilities. There's no protection for that. Okay, suspicious society. This is another very key problem in Sri Lanka. Society's attitude to business failure is that almost always there has been some misappropriation or fraud by the directors. Whenever a company fails, the society thinks that there's a fraud or misappropriation of funds by the directors. This perception is difficult to shake off, and the bad name in the market is usually one of the biggest obstacles in engineering a complex business turnarounds. Taking the case of golden key issue. What's the golden key issue? Why the golden key has been failed overnight? before the golden key was collapsed. Have you ever heard that the depositors' funds were refused to pay, or the interest on the due dates were not paid? Have you ever come across any case like that prior to this fallen of golden key? There were some certain issues regarding the MIS reports submitted to the central bank. Central bank detected certain malpractices and other things, and they published that malpractices. Say that Mr. Lavala had fraud, taken the money. What happened? Within following day morning, all the depositors were struggling to take funds from the golden key. And the chain impact went to all the institutions under the Selinco. There are some companies who were unable to continue with the business. Central bank has to put promoters separately to run the business. They have finance, Ceylon, and FNG properties like that. Outside bankers to manage this. So whatever report back behind, still the depositor funds are not being paid yet, but most of the properties belongs to Selinco Group has been taken over by the government, inclusive of Hyatt Hotel, Selinco Building, and number of other taken over to UDA, Urban Development Authority, but not paid the compensation to the depositors. So shaking off this bad name is in the market very difficult. So some of the organized companies of this Selinco Group has been changed their names. Selinco Business Development, CDB, Citizen Business Finance, Selinco Banking any? Setris Lanka, Selinco Setris Lanka. Likewise, change the name to survive in the society. So we have examples in our society itself. It's not easy to do these turnarounds. To improve our turnaround practices, what are the initiatives we should take? In Sri Lanka, first one, change the attitudes of the banks and other creditors. With the business recovery as a specialized discipline and encourage the banks to employ skilled workout specialists who can understand the issues, turn around and develop in them the ability to work with other creditors. Right? Specialized workers. Banks to employ skilled workout specialists. Who are they? Who are they? You are those specialized discipline. So you have to develop yourself as business recovery specialists, consultants within the banking sector. That's a need of the day. You have a big role to play in the future. Be a specialist in the business recovery team. Educate, train and develop special and multidisciplinary business recovery professionals. Multidisciplinary business recovery specialized who could advise companies on strategies regarding revival, restructuring, and turnaround. This is a professional area you have to develop. Create awareness in the business community that companies which become sick could be nursed back to health. That is not always true, that the sickness had occurred because cheating or fraud. The attitude change karanga. We have to do that. Any business fails, we have to go forward and try to nurse them put back to the business. Our new law that addresses the special issues are business recovery and establish special courts manned by judges who have clear understanding. Still for all, some of the organizations, judicial authorities, judges, not understanding this our concept, Aggie principle. Still, when I went number of instances to court number 5 at Halstorf, Magistrate Court number 5 at Halstorf, where check frauds has been dealt. I was seated there behind the bench and watching the proceedings. Still, they are not understood the banking law. Still, judges are not aware of the banking law. There is no separate banking law, but certain laws are applicable for these cases are not understood. When the checks are bounced, the concept behind the check, that it is the legal section behind is Truncation and Settlement Act. Even some of the lawyers said to this implementation of this. Still, they are filing cases under, not under Debt Recovery Act 2 of 1990. Still, they are filing cases in the Criminal Procedure Code section 399 and 400. Manga judgment still we are far away. 1990 will allow it. Our new laws address the special issues. Okay, we need to be learned through careful education and training. It's part of it. After all issues and business process, create awareness of business community that the lines of defining recovery, restructure, and liquidation are necessarily diffused and impress upon the community, and there's a need for them to obtain a proper understanding of these concepts in this day of age. Now, this issue was discussed, I think, about 20 years back. There's a seminar at the Galadari Hotel where this materials were discussed 20 years back. I retired 10 years back. So before that, I was there in this seminar. Still, we are far away. So new generation has to find the things that is applicable to our recoveries, how to do best. We can reduce a lot of our NPAs. Since there are many emerging issues, this rapidly developing subject, some international standard norms and regulations should be studied, proposed, and followed in Sri Lanka. It's lacking with us. Let us finally remember that good entrepreneurs are few and are asset to the nation. It is the interest of the society to nurture them when they help them if they fall sick. Let's develop good hospitals at the banks, efficient preventive and curative healthcare, the system and procedures, and clever doctors. I can't say you and me because I'm out. You are the clever doctors to do this in the future. Okay. Now let's see what are the role of the bank to do in this turnaround principles. At the commencement of business relationship, that means before the granting the facility, ensure that the business is properly studied. Customer's business properly studied. Look at the cost structure, industry norms, and acceptable levels. Where are we? Beside that, carry out proper due diligence. That is 3 to 5 years backward financial statements to be analyzed. Avoid over-financing or under-financing. Both are dangerous. But you should not give whatever customer asking, and we have to analyze and see how much customer need. If customer is not asking that amount, you have to tell the customer that you can't do this project without this amount, for which you should be professionally I'm not qualified, but professionally you have to develop yourself. Underfinancing, same. When you underfinancing, after granting a facility, within 2 weeks, before 2 weeks, customer coming with a check asking for a TOD. That it will show how your credit evaluation. Okay, you have to understand this. If the exposure is too large, go for a syndication. Or for small banks. If there are several banks involved, look at the possibility of sharing the security on equitable proportionate manner. If not, different banks will act on different directions in the event of a crisis. So you study about the syndicate loans and when sharing the security equitable, what that? Concurrent mortgage bond. So study this production, syndicate loans, consortiums, and sharing, equally sharing about assets mortgage to the banks in equal manner, or not equal actually, but yes, equal manner. That's called concurrent mortgage. Okay. Work out the working capital requirement based on the properly studied operating cycle. This is the most crucial part, working capital management. Working capital lifeblood of a business. Leave room for upward revision of facilities for financing growth of the business. We always mention this. If you are evaluate the customer proposal, when he's finalizing the documents, increase 20% or 25% the facility for upward revisions and document for the revised amount and keep it ready. Don't release. You prepare for 1 million loan, get the documents prepared for 1.25 million and keep it ready. Whenever customers further loans are required, you don't have to put board papers and additional papers to get approval for that. Already you have approved that, you can release without any difficulty, as and when required by the customer. Make provision for compulsory equity build-up by way of cash retention and dividend restrictions. When it comes to restructuring, reschedulement, business turnaround, control the outflow of profits, dividend restrictions, in building of cash retention, that is build up security, build up savings build-ups. If it's an overdraft facility, government overdraft facility, try to reduce the balance regularly by a certain amount. It will assist you to structure the strength of the facility. Structure the facilities taking account seasonal fluctuation of the business. Whenever seasonal fluctuations are there, see that customers are entertained correctly. Off season, be careful not to lend anything. Be ready to be a part of the business. Be ready to be a part of the business. This is the motto of the International Bank. Why say it's a part of the business? Where do the bankers stays in the balance sheet of the customer? Customer balance sheet එක bank ඉන්නේ කොතනද? Next to equity. Liability side එකේ equity එක ළඟින් ඉන්නේ long term borrowings, bank borrowings. So we are partners of the business. Equity is given by the owner and he is having the lifetime interest. Loan capital given by the banks and it has a limited lifestyle of need. We have interest in the business. Visit, and visit. Visit are the best way to understand the business as it goes. Whenever, at least once in 3 months, manufacturing organization, you have to visit. Even any business, once in 6 months, you have to make inspection. You have to make a business inspection. And document information for future reference. When you go for a visit, inspection, prepare a document, inspection report, sign and keep in the file for future references. The successor has to continue from that point onward. Keep the hierarchy informed of the development, particularly the early warning signals. Do not hide elephants. If you are seeing something when you visit, immediately report that to your hierarchies. Early warning signals. Call for and go through financial statement regularly, particularly management accounts. They are still good source of information, despite potential manipulation due to obvious reasons. We know that financial statements are prepared for tax purposes. Therefore, number of manipulations could be seen. We cannot avoid that. But we have to use those things along with your inspection, and when you go for inspection, you verify the information there with the actual position in the business. So you can come to conclusion at the actual situation of the business. Keep an eye on the development of the industry concerned. Anticipate changes in the facility requirement. Industry change. Whenever industry is changing, and wait to facilitate that with the customer. Be quick to accommodate requests relating to temporary cash flow issues. Not solving such problems can lead to permanent losses that will in turn create permanent problems. Whenever short-term problem arises from the customer is casting a TOD from you. Okay, it will not solve the problem. It can lead to permanent losses. And it will create permanent problems. Therefore, identify the need carefully, structure a facility according to the need. Ensure that the business always runs at the desired capacity level, above the break-even level, without disruption to the production, or without loss of the capacity. If the client does not have proper controls and planning, the bank may insist on it. Manufacturing organizations see whether break-even level without any disruption manufactures. Otherwise, that level cost will lower and then profit will be declining and you cannot recover the loans. When faced with a failure, what's the role of the bank? Try to understand the problem as clearly as possible. Avoid generalization and giving reasons such as cash flow problem, liquidity problem, working capital issues, financial problem, etc. These are outcomes. These issues are beneath of the symptoms. Problem solving these are the outcomes result of a cash flow problem. Problem is something else. These are symptoms. If the issues are temporary and easy to resolve, rescheduling of the facility will do. If the issues are bigger and the nature of the business failure, then the more comprehensive approach will be required. Consider the appropriation of product restructuring, kill bad products, innovate products, adjust portfolio. If the customer's production, there's a production which has certain market and eating resources, ask the customer to stop that. Innovate new products. Restructuring marketing and buy arrangements. Process engineering and productive improvement. Okay, engineering and productive improvement. What is engineering? Directing when it comes to default level. Look for which areas are needed attention and enhance that part and do an engineering process. Productive improvement. Spending on R&D. Management restructuring insists on introducing the required management inputs if found to be lacking. If you found that management does not have required input to technology, technical knowledge, you may request to get an outsider to the management. Okay. In case of governance issue, believe that the best corporate governance is not always the case. Do not get excited. What is corporate governance? The directors, board of directors, role and responsibilities. Strengthen the monitoring process. Declare your concern and take it up directly with the client. Formalize any procedure required to ensure better corporate governance. Probably it is still better to recover the business. Go for it. So these are the issues that we are going to discuss. Finally, a number of reasons may result company failures. A bank or finance institution should ideally work towards avoidance of such failures while commencing and continuing business relationship, and also when faced with the failure. It is much easier to kill a business to recover money from the breakup, value of hazard, but almost all stakeholders are bound to lose. Therefore, a win-win approach restructuring the firm is beneficial to all parties. A banker's approach to managing the business relationship play a vital role. We discussed these different approaches. While restructuring has far better solution to all parties, it's riskier in a way because the banker may have to infuse more funding. The owners must cooperate by giving additional commitment such instances so that you have a balanced solution. Finally, the bank's approach should be towards a business failure. It can be revived. Okay? A goal without a plan is just a wish. Go ahead with a plan. Okay, any questions?
Sir, just a question.
Yeah.
So now if company is doing bad, and in certain situations in terms of restructuring, it is very difficult to convince the management in terms of where you need to lend further in order to assist the organization. Could you kind of give some pointers where we can use to get the management's buy-in in such a case? Like in general, if you could.
Yeah. Yes. Now, if you find the management is not going along with you, it's pointless going along with that business. We know that it can be revived, it can be restructured. But if the customer or the management of the customer is not coming forward, we cannot do anything because they are the people who have to come to an agreement with us. But we have one option. If we think that we can continue with the business, we can appoint a team of management from our part, from the bank. Okay, it's a part of the restructuring arrangement. We'll appoint team of management from our part to take over the business and run the business. Okay, it can be done in the case of there's a property mortgage, and the business can be revived, can be continued, but the management is not coming forward to do anything. To make up our interest in the business, we can appoint a management team and run the business. After recovering our component, we can give the business to them, whatever they want to do. That can be done. So we have two options. Either we take over the management and run the business, or we take the exit option. Okay? Okay, we'll then wind up for the day. Thank you very much. We'll meet next week and we'll discuss the exit strategies. Okay.